Hello, this is Christina Caudill with Radiant Astrology, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really special program for you today. I'm joined by Sweetman, Virginia Rosenberg, and we are here to talk all about eclipses in Eclipses as Initiations. So I first wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us, because this is a very special topic that is near to all of our hearts. And we can't wait to share with you some really interesting and hopefully very helpful and useful information as we enter eclipse season. But I wanted to welcome my beautiful guests. Hi,
Hi.
Katie and Virginia.
So great to be here, right on the cusp of eclipses.
It's an exciting time. Happy to be gathered with all of you.
Thank you so much. I know just that we're all three together, I feel so supportive. I've done these eclipse webinars before, and I know both of you have done, teaching around eclipses. Usually, I know I'm usually all alone, and so it's awesome that we're all together here and we can share what we have been learning over the years. I know
we're three. We're a sacred number.
Yes, I think that's so perfect. And hi, everyone in the chat box. I will go ahead and get started. What we plan today is that each one of us, myself, then Katie, then Virginia, will share some teachings on eclipses, on the coming eclipse season, how you can move through this season with a lot more awareness and clarity, and some resources on how to really align with the emotional transformation, which can be, this can be a big time for many of us. And as we know, obviously, it's a big time in the collective. And join us at the end. Virginia will have a very special little guided meditation that she will close with. And we will also share with you our upcoming eclipse circle. I know I've had many emails of people asking, when's your next eclipse circle? And as you know, I love to do it just as we're getting on the on-ramp of eclipse season, which we are right now. So we'll have all that for you later in the end. All right, so I want to make sure we get plenty of great info in, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start my presentation. Let's see. Present. Okay, can you guys see that? Does that look okay? Can you let me know? Because I can't see. Oh, thumbs up. Okay, I just saw your, thank you. Thanks, Virginia. Awesome. Okay. All right, so again, this is Christina Caudill, and I'm joined by Virginia Rosenberg and Katie Sweetman, and we are really honored that you've joined us for Eclipses as Initiations. This is a time, as we can tell, that something is arising. Something is arising not only in our outer world, but within us. And our intention is to help give you some more clarity on the ancient significations of eclipses. They're ancient. They've been around, since the earth and the sun and the moon, basically. And there's so much that we can learn for their purpose in our lives. Oops. Let me see. I guess I have to use that. There we go. In today's webinar, we're going to explore, I'll begin with exploring the anatomy of eclipses, what exactly they are, for those of you who can't really picture in your mind, like how it works with all the planets and the earth and the nodes. I'm a visual person, so I will show you some visuals. We'll gain insight into the meaning of the coming 3 eclipses. This is a season with 3 eclipses that we're right on the cusp of. And you'll learn about the transformative potential of eclipse season, which I think is something that we all really need to bring into our consciousness. It's like our body and our unconscious knows something is going on. And we don't want to just react to that in fear or even in dread, because we just don't know what the movement is. We want to really understand what the planets are trying to make us aware of. To begin, I am Christina Caudill. For those of you who don't know me, I know many of the people in the chat box though, so thank you all for joining me and supporting me all these years. I am with Radiant Astrology. That's my company. I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I'm also a facilitator of past life healing. I'm a consulting astrologer, which just means that I do one-on-one consultations. And I have my Radiant Astrology podcast on iTunes, which you definitely want to check out. It's one of my great loves. And I've been hosting online eclipse circles, I think, since 2014. I don't know, it might be going back to 2013. I have to look that up. But they all started out just with me, gathering some women and clients and community together online. And now, it's grown into just a purpose of mine. And I'm, again, I'm super honored to have Katie and Virginia here because they've also been doing their own work with eclipses. And there's something about joining together in community during eclipse season where we can really see, the humanity in one another during this time. It's such a beautiful experience. So eclipses, right? What do they really mean? Now, these are times that essentially the essence of eclipses is they're periods of realignment. Okay, because these planets are coming into an alignment, and in our own lives, they're realigning something, right? And they're where fate, destiny, and choice all intermingle with the interplay of light and shadow. That's supposed to be light. It looks like I left off the T. But, and this is my quote. You can quote me on this. But, what is fate and destiny? And, are we just being thrown around by the planets and by the gods, right? We actually are engaging in all of these things. There's times where we feel like the gods just put us on a certain path, right? And other times where we feel like we're growing into something and we have a choice in it, and we can choose to grow and be more than what we, have known ourselves to be. And during these times, sometimes it can be very disorienting because there's this light and shadow within ourselves and within the universe. What is light, right? We think of it as the life force. And shadow is associated with the unconscious. And oftentimes we do think of it as sort of, positive versus negative, or light and dark forces. Or essentially, when we understand the concept of karma as things that we've set in motion that are now, coming back to us. And how do we then move through the karma that really is part of our destiny? We always have a choice to align with more light and more shadow. And it's really important for us to amplify our own light. And a lot of times that means understanding our shadow, accepting it, and as well as being conscious of, that we have both light and shadow and all this possibility. And so eclipses really tend to bring all of this to the fore. Now, for this eclipse season, just to kind of give you all an overview, typically eclipses come in pairs, right, of a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, 2 weeks apart. And we have them about every 6 months, right? So we tend to have 2 eclipse seasons in a year. Now, last year we had 3 of them because one of them was it was straddling, 2019 and 2020. We had that Eclipsemas eclipse, and then one just after the new year. But generally we see them every 6 months, right? So they're rare, but they're not like, more rare than that. A solar eclipse is a new moon that is simply aligned with the lunar nodes. And we'll talk about what the lunar nodes are. So if you understand what a new moon is, where the sun and the moon are conjunct, as we see it on the zodiac wheel, then that is a solar eclipse as long as it is aligned with the lunar nodes. The lunar eclipses are full moons aligned with the lunar nodes, okay? So, and I just really want to make this clear because sometimes I hear people say, oh my God, it's a solar eclipse, and oh my God, it's a new moon. Well, you know, new moons make solar eclipses and full moons make lunar eclipses. And so this coming season, we're actually going to have 3 eclipses. So we're coming up on a lunar eclipse. 2 weeks later will be a solar eclipse. And then 2 weeks after that, another lunar eclipse. And so just to get a little bit more precise, for this eclipse season, June 5th, coming right up, is the lunar eclipse. Again, a full moon in Sagittarius at 15 degrees. Then 2 weeks later, we have on June 21st, a solar eclipse, which is also a new moon at 0 degrees Cancer. That is the solstice point. It's summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, and it is the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. So, but essentially it's a solstice point, and that's kind of rare to have an eclipse right on the solstice point. Can't remember the last time we had one. And so we'll talk more about that, but that's the one I'm really keeping my eye on, especially. Then July 5th, we have a lunar eclipse, again, a full moon on a lunar eclipse at 13 Capricorn on July 5th. And isn't that interesting? Just after our July 4th holiday. And so these are the 3 eclipses in a row. And so what makes a full moon or a new moon an eclipse is how close they are to the lunar nodes. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So those of you who, and I'm just doing this as basics for people who don't know, I'm going to assume you don't know, or that you could use a refresher. So here we are on Mother Earth. You know, this is the apparent path of the sun. It looks like it's going around the Earth, although we know that we actually rotate around it. But the apparent path is called the ecliptic. And then we've got the moon, the moon's path, you know, the moon's orbit around Mother Earth. And then where these intersect are, we just call them the nodes, but they're the lunar nodes. It's important to understand because all planets have nodes, but for the eclipses, we're looking at the lunar nodes, right? And so when we have these alignments of the sun and the moon together and they are close to these points, you know, these are not bodies in space. These are simply alignments, right? That is why this whole theme of alignment is really significant. Something is coming back to be, whether you want to think about it as corrected or adjusted, you know, there was some kind of cosmic alignment happening. And so the lunar nodes are considered the evolutionary arc of the moon's path around Mother Earth, right? And it creates a sort of womb for the Earth. Now, this is according to Dana Rudhyar, that in some ways, you know, symbolically, there is this womb sort of energy around us because of the lunar nodes. And oftentimes we think of the south node symbolizing the past karma, or even past lives, and the north node symbolizing the future and our future evolution. We feel more pulled and more open, like we're taking in the future. And the south node symbolizes a release, just similar to how we release the path. And in a similar way that a baby is, you know, connected to its mother for biological growth, that as we grow as cosmic beings, as spiritual beings, then we also grow and evolve, and we need, you know, and there's a natural need to leave the past behind, right? And so this is symbolically telling us that there is something to do with our growth, something to do with the cycle of life that really comes much more magnetized when we look at the lunar nodes. And so what happens when we have eclipses, you know, whether they're in pairs or in threes, is this time, together they create what we like to think of as a vortex, right? There's a liminal space where the veil between the consciousness and subconscious, it feels as though it's lifted. It feels as though sometimes we feel like dream life and waking life, we can't always tell the same. Those of us that are able to sleep. I know I've had a hard time sleeping lately, and I blame Mars part of it, but it's this interesting time where this is why it's really important for us to befriend and understand our shadow. Because when we don't really know ourselves at what's possible for us, then we may, be confused about who we are or how we're moving in the world in our evolution. Oftentimes, experiences during eclipses have far-reaching effects and profound consequences. And I believe this is a quote I want to say from Demetra George. A lot of astrologers say this type of thing, but I want to make sure I attribute it. That seems so true. There's something that just things sort of ignite, right? And it feels like they're profound moments, right? We can feel the profundity of the time that we're in. What's repressed tends to emerge, right? The things that we've been sort of ignoring or not facing oftentimes can emerge for confrontation and potentially resolution. It's really this resolving of the past. Sometimes it's a confrontation, sometimes it's that type of energy. Other times, it could even be motivating, or it can just be a coming to an awareness and an awakening and a realization. And then just a real deep knowing, right? When we think of what does it mean to be aligned, is when you sort of know for sure, which path to take, or are pulled forward rather than, having to push yourself forward, right? And I really put into emphasis here about our dreams during eclipse periods. Eclipse dreams oftentimes can show us, what we've been holding on to. And sometimes when they're really extreme, it's because the unconscious is telling us, you've really been holding on to this deep fear. Maybe it's irrational, maybe it is something you need to pay attention to, or maybe it's something that your psyche just really wants you to release and resolve. Now, lunar eclipses are times when we tend to see more amplified emotion because the moon represents our emotions, our emotional life, our emotional needs. We may feel the sense of the unmet needs, especially since the moon is in shadow, right? And so we might, even if it's, it might not even be fully real literally, but we may feel unsatisfied in some significant way. It calls us to release attachments to the past, because the moon often represents the past, home, the family of origin, our conditioned habits, our sense of security, right? And that's really important for the moon and even Cancer, is do we feel safe and secure? And sometimes that can, we don't truly feel the way that we normally seek because of this shadow on the moon. Also, how are we nourishing ourselves? Are we getting what we need for nourishment? And that can even be on an emotional level as well as a physical level, right? It's when the Earth's shadow falls upon the moon. And so the past, which the moon represents, is obscured by the present, right? So there's an opportunity to release the past and to release our conditionings. And this is just sort of a diagram of what we see during a lunar eclipse. So remember, a full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposed, right? And here we have the Earth in the middle. And so the Earth's shadow is falling upon the moon, which is oftentimes where we see the moon turn blood red. Now, we might not all see it everywhere on the Earth. I didn't have time to check to see where this is going to be visible. But wherever it's visible on the Earth is where we tend to see the red. And this really, that blood red moon, if you've ever seen a blood red lunar eclipse, it really is evocative of, the feminine, or, the woman's, menstruation, and also just any kind of, this intense, what blood symbolizes. It's the life force, but there's something there that can really have a sense of urgency and amplification. And so with the solar eclipse, we are dealing with the sun being eclipsed. And so the sun representing ego, right? Like our conscious ego, even our sense of creativity, how we create in the world. Essentially our public self, our public image, the face we put out to the world, our reputation even, and our sense of purpose. Now, solar eclipses obscure the light of the sun and cast shadow upon the earth, right? So because of that, the present is said to be obscured by the past. So then the past becomes even more important, right? And it obscures the present. And so issues of the past then become really important to resolve. And it can also feel for a time like, again, disorienting in terms of where am I going? What is my purpose? What is my direction? And who am I, right? What is my image of myself? That is part of this disorientation, whereas the lunar eclipse, we might not feel we're getting our needs met, and then that can arise things in our emotional life. The solar eclipse is like, where am I going? What am I about? Maybe I've lost my sense of purpose for a period of time. And sometimes when we're in that, the universe deplores a vacuum, right? And so that is a calling for us to seek deeper and to fill that vacuum with a sense of knowing. And for a solar eclipse, I know I'm going over time, but I have more to share, so I will try to be quick about it. But I still have more I've got to share. So we've got the sun here, and here's our moon, and then there is the earth. And so those of you that remember, if you've ever seen a total solar eclipse, like we had that great American solar eclipse, right? That shadow went across America at that time. It was 2017. So this one, I believe, is going over like India and sort of that area of the world. And that area of the world will be able to see sort of more of a shadow. I think they're getting that sort of corona view, as if I'm correct. But so it depends on where this falls on the earth. But essentially here we see the moon being in between the sun and the earth, and it's the moon blocking the light of the sun. So for the Sagittarius lunar eclipse that's coming up June 5th, it's at 12:12 p.m. Pacific, 3:12 p.m. Eastern time. And this is the chart for it. So we've got the sun opposite the moon, 15 degrees Sagittarius. That's also known as the great attractor, which is one of these very sensitive degrees, that simply is, the great attractor is one of those sort of like cosmic, like black holes that like amplifies the energy, and that brings things up to light. I think it's also called like the whistleblower degree, if I'm correct. And as you can see at 15 degrees, they're tightly square to Mars in Pisces, right? So we have all this mutable energy that's really calling us to change, change our ideas, change our views, and learn more. And obviously, maybe even go on a spiritual quest of some kind, sacrifice something for the good of all. I mean, there's a lot that this can symbolize. It's important to look at the light and the shadow of the archetypes. And so since this is highlighting Sagittarius, the light and the shadow, the higher mind and wisdom, and the natural law, which is law beyond the man-made, new horizons, new adventures. The shadow can be about racism and xenophobia, because with, Sagittarius ruling like foreigners and foreign things, the shadow can be that, racism. The righteousness, where we feel like we already know it all, not open to new ideas. Also just the overall exaggeration of this time. Obviously, we can see a lot of these happening right now. So we know that this is one potent eclipse. And it's interesting to look at the Sabian symbols, right? These are these channeled symbols that give us just an image that help us to tap into sort of the meaning and the symbol of this lunation. The Sagittarius moon Sabian symbol is seagulls fly around a ship in expectation of food. So just imagine, seeing all these seagulls, this kind of clamor and chaos of this energy. And the, birds often symbolize spirituality, spiritual energy, you know, and they're expecting something. They're expecting to be fed, or there's something they need, that they desire. And the Gemini Sun Sabian symbol is a woman activist in an emotional speech dramatizing her cause. Now, isn't that interesting, right? That is so seemingly perfect for this moment in time. And so, again, sometimes these aren't literally true, they're just symbolically true, but that seems pretty literal. Now, with the Cancer solar eclipse, that's coming up June 2021. Again, it's on the solstice, the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. And it's at 0 degrees Cancer. Symbolism for Cancer is, you know, the shadow and light is the people. Cancer symbolizes the people, as does the moon. So something to do with the people, right? The general public, the people of nations. It's the feminine principle, right? Both, you know, all genders can have this feminine energy, nourishment, protectionism. Cancer is the crab. So you can, you know, understand the hard shell that cancers can have because it is concerned for protection. You know, the incubation, the going back into the womb. And that ties in with the desire for care, the vulnerability of Cancer, and being especially emotionally sensitive. And here it's kind of an out of sign square to Mars. So there can be this real sensitivity, and also maybe even just feeling attacked in that way, you know, emotionally attacked. Even if maybe we aren't, we may be extra sensitive to, you know, that kind of energy. This is now, according to Bernadette Brady, who wrote the book on eclipses, The Eagle and the Lark. Now, she associates the solar eclipses with the Saros series. All eclipses are part of families, right? But she's done a lot of research on the Saros series as far as solar eclipses. Now, she's supposed to be coming out with a book with them on the lunar eclipses, but that hasn't happened yet, as far as I know. But it's so interesting because these eclipses are hundreds of years old, and they are part of the family, which has a similar theme. And the theme for this Cancer solar eclipse is blockages lead to misjudging one's strengths or the situation. So wait before taking real action. So if we may feel blocked, we may feel like, you know, we can't move forward, and that may lead to a misjudging of the situation, of ourselves, or of the situation we're facing. And so we want to, you know, pause, take our time before we really take any real action. I mean, I don't know how long we wait, but, you know, I would say for an eclipse, at least wait a couple weeks, you know, for the energy to sort of clear until we're on to the next new nation, if you can. But just pay attention to the situation and know that if there's blockages there, that may not mean anything about, you know, your potential. The Sabian symbol for this eclipse is on a ship, the sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. So just think about that. Here we have another ship symbolism. The sailors, those that are entrusted with, you know, the flag, the symbol of the nation or whatever they are allied to. They raise an old flag, and they lower an old flag and raise a new one. So it's a changing of the guard in some sense, or maybe an honoring of a changing of something significant. The Capricorn lunar eclipse, July 4th and 5th, is at 13 degrees Capricorn and Cancer. And as we can see here, again, another full moon. And the Capricorn moon is right in there in that mix, not too close conjunct, but I would say essentially, I mean, here's at least 10 degrees from Jupiter, but still it's, you know, we have the Jupiter Pluto conjunction again, right? So that is obviously going to heighten. Jupiter expands what it touches. Pluto is that, you know, relentless drive of change and transformation. And the moon, you know, activating all of this, also square to Chiron. And so with Capricorn, the light and the shadow responsibility, maturity in our own lives. We may be asking ourselves, how can I take more responsibility for my life? How can I be more of an elder or an authority? Now, the shadow can be this desire for control, this insatiable control, a sense of restriction. It can even be the abuse of the patriarchy, especially if we've got, Pluto in the mix. Themes around business and corporations, as well as structure and restructuring, right? So what needs to be restructured in, our society by the powers that be, and maybe this is a thing about, the people versus, the powers that be in control. And obviously, the moon also represents the people. So maybe certain people taking control as well. And so the Sabian symbols for the Capricorn moon are an ancient bas-relief carved in granite, remains a witness to a long forgotten culture. So, an ancient sort of carving in granite, witnessing a long forgotten culture. What is the foundations upon which we stand as a nation, as a people? That seems to be what it says. And what's worth, honoring? Or what do we just need to see that we haven't seen before? The Cancer sun, a very old man facing a vast dark space to the northeast. Right? It's interesting, very old man. We usually think of Capricorn in that theme, but here it is an echo of that, facing a vast dark space to the northeast, facing potentially one's spirit, one's soul, one's eternity. And so, as far as the meaning of eclipses, ultimately they are times of observing the self, really, because that's all we can control in the world, really. Am I living my karma and my destiny, my dharma? Tibetans believe that the effects of eclipses are multiplied thousands of times, positive and negative effects of eclipses. They're multiplied 1,000 times on lunar eclipses and 100,000 times on solar eclipses, right? So our actions and intentions matter. The Buddhists really take these days as prayer, meditation, doing good deeds. All of this are essential. Just observing the self. It's said that certain branches of Buddhism, they work every day except on eclipses, and I think full moons and new moons too. And they use those days as observing the self, being in reflection of who you are and your place in the world. There is also an ancient association with alchemy, alchemy being this deep transformation. When you are cooking, your emotions inside are just heated up and they have nowhere to go. Sometimes it's that pressure, whether it's an emotional pressure or pressure from the outside, that transmutes base metals into noble metals, right? That's what alchemy traditionally was about. So maybe something within us is transmuted from base into noble, right? And so that takes a real, the process is separating and purifying these separate parts of ourselves and cleansing them, right? In this baptism, and that's the eclipses, and then integrating them again. And it's said that we arise to a new level of perfection. Okay, so I'm way over my time. That is it for me, and I will go ahead and pass this on over to Katie. I'm so sorry, Katie, but I think we have a great audience here today, and you can just take your time. I'm not in a rush.
Oh, there we go. Hi. So I just want to quickly introduce who I am, because I know that we are a mixture of audiences, both Christina's and Virginia's. And I'm actually, so happy to be able to share this time with 3 or 2 talented astrologers, and we are all bringing our own perspective. And we both sort of come from this, let's say, spiritual, evolutionary, how do we use this time for our best transformation, our personal work, and our reflection. So just quickly, for those who don't know who I am, sorry for the sirens, I live in Brooklyn, New York. So my name is Sweetman, and I call myself a holistic astrologer. And what does that mean? I'm using astrology, but I'm also looking at the self. I'm looking whether it's with a client or working with all your different layers. So you can, let's say, intersect with the astrology in your best opportunity, your best light. And we all know, or maybe at least most of us on this call, that we are constantly working on ourselves. And eclipses give us one of these sort of vortices or power moments in the year for us to do that alchemy that Christina was just talking about. My work, I work under the name Empowering Astrology, empoweringastrology.com, and I've been doing client work. I'm a consulting astrologer here in New York for the last 8-9 years, but many of my clients are all around the world. And when I sit down and I work with a client, eclipses are one of the first things that I'm looking at. Why? Because eclipses talk about the story arc of your life. Now, as Christina was talking about in her presentation, eclipses have to do with the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes being these 2 points in the sky that are always opposite, that talk to where the moon is sort of intersecting with the eclipses. And when we were born, we have the lunar nodes in one part of our chart, or actually 2 parts, because they are an axis. And when we were born, there is a sort of a story arc that was set in motion. And depending on where our north node is positioned in our chart, that's sort of our true north. That's our spiritual north on the compass. And eclipses sort of, and Christina mentioned this, they happen every 6 months. And they're sort of going back and forth between 2 different signs, but they're always touching back on that original story of you. You from, let's say, this life perspective, what are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to head? But also, where is your soul journeying throughout many lifetimes? So there's a sense of past when we have eclipses. There's a sense of past lives. There's a sense of memory and instinct. And as we do this webinar, we are less than a week away from a lunar eclipse. And we're sort of in eclipse season already, if we're being honest about it. But we all know, regardless of what's happening in the world right now, that we are in some sort of unordinary time. Things are sort of cooking. I think that was a word that Christina used a few moments ago. One of the metaphors that I use when I talk about eclipses is they sort of show us the great stage of our life. And it's as if we are watching a performance. This performance happens to be our life. And when the eclipses come in, there's a sense of the curtain coming down on one act and the curtain coming up on the next. And sometimes that curtain coming up and down are on 2 very dramatically different acts. So I want you all to think about your own lives, like what's going on right now. I know eclipses, they have a tendency to echo things on a political or a world stage, but what's happening in our personal lives? Because eclipses, they punctuate the story of our lives, they punctuate the year. So we might be feeling like, oh, there's something brewing, there's something shifting. And sometimes when I talk about eclipse season, people get nervous because they know that eclipses mean change. But this is why I like to use this metaphor of the great stage, because if we know it's a story, if we're able to sort of step outside of it, sort of have this dual position of consciousness where we're watching something, but we're also living it at the same time. If we know that this eclipse that's on June 5th is bringing the curtain up on a very new story. But we also know that the eclipse is on June 21st, the one that's in Cancer, and then July 5th, the one that's in Capricorn, or the 4th of July, depending on what part of the world you're in, it's the end of a story. What am I talking about? So I want you all to think back to July of 2018. That was the month, was July 12th actually. We had a solar eclipse in Cancer, and that started a new story. And that story had a lot of Pluto energy in it. And there's a sense of, because Christina said, relentlessness, but it said that over the story arc, these kind of mini story arcs, we were going to have to do a lot of deep work, Pluto. And 2018, 2019, parts of 2020, we've been doing that. And over the past couple of years, the North Node, so our compass north, was pointing us towards the sign of Cancer. We had to go home. Now we're literally home. We've been home. Here in New York, I've been in quarantine for like 2 months. But we needed to move collectively and spiritually move towards the things that would feed us and nurture us. We had to collectively look back at the structures of our life. What have we built in our life? What are the roles that we've been playing? What have we been a part of, for better or for worse, that now needs to have some work? Now, that's a story that we're coming to the end of. So in this great stage, there's a sense of we're wrapping up an act that's been unfolding for the last 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. But this new story is coming in. As Christina highlighted in her presentation, the eclipse that's on June 5th is the first in the series that is going to be in Sagittarius and Gemini. The south node of the moon is going to be in Sagittarius until sometime in 2021. I don't have the exact date. But that means that collectively we have to look at our beliefs, our philosophies, our worldviews, how we see everything. And it could be something as simple on a personal level as the beliefs that no longer serve us, that restrict us, that could even imprison us. And we've got a really potent lineup of Jupiter and Pluto with these eclipses that are sort of breaking down the past. So as you sort of sit and watch the great stage of your life, you might be noticing that some things are starting to break down, some things aren't working anymore. And I'm just talking about on a personal level. Maybe the beliefs that sort of served you and ran your life up until this very moment, they're unsustainable, they're not working anymore. Something that my spirit guides, and I'm a psychic medium, so I have like a very strong connection to my spirit guides, have been telling me since February is that the lives that we lived and the people that we were have sort of, that's ended. We are in this in-between time right now. And so what is coming out of this time? And I think that these eclipses are really much initiating, there's that word, initiation, initiating this new life. And we're sort of going forward into a new chapter, a new stage. But even though this eclipse on the 5th of June talks about the past, our old beliefs, that we will eventually have that eclipse. And I'm kind of going a little bit further down the line into November, where we will have that solar eclipse in Gemini in November 30th, give or take, depending on what part of the world you're in. So we need to all collectively open up to new ideas, new perspectives. We need information right now. So it's so important to sort of note the cast and characters that are coming into your life right now. Also, who's leaving? What stories are wrapping up? What new ideas are you having? There's a sense of like the information, the ideas, and the conversations that you're having right now are planting the seeds that will take you all the way to the end of 2021. The energy is really potent. The things that you say yes to, the things that you say no to right now sort of get amplified. I mean, I know that Christina in her presentation showed the things about the Buddhists, and they do the prayers on the eclipses because this sense of I can't speak English suddenly, but magnifying what our intentions are. And I think to that point, it's really important to be clear about what our intentions are right now, because the energy is so potent. And if you wish for something, you really want to make sure you're wishing for the right thing. Sometimes people say, oh, I wouldn't be upset if I lost my job or whatever. And suddenly an eclipse comes and we kind of get our wish. So I think that, to the point of the North Node being in Gemini right now, write out your story. What do you want your story to be? What do you want sort of this time that you come out of the pandemic, and what do you want to sort of step into? What sort of new cast of new characters do you want in? There is an element of fate that's happening right now. There are things that are both in our control and not out of our control. Sort of the door is swinging whether we like it or not. And I think, and this is something that might be a little bit more of an intermediate point, and this is where it really helps to know your own natal chart. You have your own lunar nodes. How does June and July of 2020 weave its way into the story of your own lunar nodes where you were born? Because this is every eclipse, every 6 months is a check-in on your own story arc of your life. For me, it's interesting. I have my North Node in Virgo, and as we record this live webinar, the moon is just starting to get to my North Node. So this talk that I'm doing is part of my own personal story arc that is bringing me towards my own North Node in Virgo. But you might have a very different North Node that sort of this eclipse is pushing you towards that story arc. So I just want to, kind of give you this different perspective of things and to really have you respect this energy that's happening right now. It really is charged energy. Your dreams are going to be more potent. Your wishes and your hopes and your dreams are going to be more potent. Events may cluster around these eclipses that, again, punctuate the story of your life. And to an earlier point that I made, when I sit down with the client, when I look at their chart, I'm like, where are the eclipses happening? Because that's where the story is unfolding. Eclipses and Saturn and the lunar nodes sort of have a relationship with each other. That's a different topic for a different time. But if you're sort of new to some of these more intricate points about astrology, it is worthwhile looking up your chart, looking up to see where your lunar nodes are, or working with an astrologer such as myself or Virginia or Christina. So I'm just gonna pass the baton back to Christina, because we have a lot of really great stuff to share. I know that we also have Virginia's presentation, and we're going to do a meditation at the end. We're going to also talk about this upcoming eclipse circle.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you. Yay. And I love that the moon's on your North Node. Woo. You did great. It was perfect. It was a 10.0. So thank you for that. And now we have Virginia Rosenberg. Those of you who may know Virginia from her awesome TED Talk on astrology for social change. We're super honored to have her here today, and she's going to be sharing with us her experiences and insight on the eclipses. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen because I ended up making a little presentation. And I need to enroll in a course with Christina about making presentations because your presentation is so visually stunning, and I'm just
it's called Canva.
For me, I'm presentations are a last resort. But sometimes I have the type of information that I feel could use that extra visual help. So there was a little bit of that in what I wanted to share with y'all today. So yay, I did a little animation. So eclipses as initiations. I think that we got a really full view so far of how eclipses are initiations from Christina and Katie's talks. But just to break it down even further, what is an initiation? An initiation is a beginning. It's a start of something. It's also an occasion when something starts. And I loved that word occasion, because eclipses are occasions, and they tend to like pop an occasion or an event that feels quite distinct. So I saw in the comments earlier that someone was like, I got married during an eclipse and now we're divorcing or separating. Like, that's an occasion that shifts the course of our life. Eclipses are an initial encounter, which offers a test of some kind. And I loved what Christina shared about alchemy and kind of getting a more complete, full view of separate components of ourself. It's almost like eclipses bring up experiences that we encounter maybe in the world or outside of us or in our relationships, but they're also formats for us coming into kind of an encounter with our own self. So that's something that you may want to hold on to during this eclipse season as we move through, is how am I encountering myself right now? An eclipse is also like a taste of energy that is to come. So it's like kind of cracking open a new book and getting that smell of the page and reading the prologue and getting a sense like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to be about, you know, like I just got married to this person. This is what it's going to be about now. We can think of eclipses as an introduction of energy that allows us to sort of test the waters too, and paves the way for things to come next. And eclipse also comes, the word eclipse comes from etymology meaning to leave. So I loved what Katie was saying about embracing the new cast of characters in your life, embracing the new story, and recognizing that there's often a shedding, a stripping away, shedding of skin, a leaving behind that goes hand in hand with this welcoming of the new, because it's a rite of passage from one world and one way of existing and experiencing life into another world. So an initiation as a rite of passage is a ceremony, a ritual, a test, or a period of instruction in which a new member, each of us being a member, is admitted into knowledge. So really welcoming ourselves into this eclipse portal from a curious place of, what am I learning? What knowledge am I meant to engage with and receive at this time? Katie spoke a lot about the requirement of openness. That, you know, it's very difficult to absorb new knowledge when we're closed. So being very willing to open and perceive is a signature of eclipses in general, but particularly this eclipse because of where the nodes are, and we'll talk about that later, this eclipse season. And eclipses begin processes of personal metamorphosis. So, you know, we're talking a lot about the alchemy and transformation of eclipse season, but it's not always that we go through an eclipse and suddenly like we're just a completely different person. It's often we sort of receive more awareness that we need to then metamorphosize over time. And some examples of rites of passages, one was already mentioned, marriage. Another would be becoming a parent, transitioning into adulthood, becoming a priest or a spiritual initiate or devotee, a transformation or rebirth of some kind. How long does this initiation last? The term of this initiation of eclipses, its influence lasts between 6 and 18 months, depending on a lot of factors astrologically. So we can say 6 because it's 6 months from this eclipse season until the next eclipse season where we become initiated again. But these particular eclipses, we want to look more at the 18-month term, and I'll tell you why about that in a moment. And like I said, the influence of eclipses is not always immediately felt, or we're not always aware of it right away. Often we are, because they're quite dramatic. You know, they're really working with the basic luminaries, the sun and the moon, and the conscious self and the unconscious self are being activated and stimulated and swirled in this spiral of cosmic time as we're experiencing it on Earth. So we often do feel some influence, but we may not have total clarity about it until later, when our hindsight is 2020. So sometimes it's more like a seed that's planted, and over the next 6 months following it, it kind of opens up and emerges, or we experience the fallout of that eclipse. So these eclipses in June, July 2020 are beginning a new 18-month cycle that lasts until January 2022. That's why I feel that the term that we want to associate with this particular eclipse season is the 18-month term. So I spoke a little bit about the power of willing intention and awareness. For me, it's this idea that like eclipses are going to be happening regardless, right? We're here on Earth, we are subject to these influences and their impact, but many are not aware of what's happening. Maybe they're not visible, and maybe it's happening on a grander scale, or just in an arena that we're unaccustomed to tuning into. So the power of being aware of eclipses really, I believe, increases our metamorphic potential. And in addition to the power of just being willing with your intention to move through with your awareness. I'm someone who gave birth 18 months ago, and I liken it to the birth experience. There's many, many ways that we can approach the birth experience. We can be tuned into it, or we cannot. You know, there's many things that allow us to kind of go through it unconsciously, if that's what we choose, or if that's what the path that's kind of been fed to us by our conditioning. So the power of willing intention and awareness really makes a difference with how we're able to digest and integrate and kind of move into more profound state of change and transformation during eclipse seasons. So because this eclipse is beginning a new 18-month cycle of the nodes, the energies that are brought in we can think of them as like new energies that are unfamiliar to our field. So, you know, imagine you're born in one place and you're there for most of your life, and then you leave to go to college in another town, and it's like, whoa, there's some kind of a disorientation, a culture shock, and there's a lot of learning of the new lifeways and languages, and there's so much to be explored, right? The eclipses bring a similar feeling of there's a new energy that we're encountering, and that's why they're often more noticeable, and sometimes it can be confronting, surprising, activating, and troublesome to integrate. So I find eclipses to be very heightened times. I find them to be very emotional times. They tend, in my experience, they tend to really poke us in special places where we really feel it, where we're highly innervated. So that's why they can kind of knock us off balance, and it takes time to learn and acclimate to the energies that are being introduced. So I don't remember who it was. I think it was Christina who said they're not a time to kind of make big reactive decisions. It's kind of like, if something happens and I get in an altercation with someone, it's better for me, as I feel myself getting heightened, to go and take a walk for a while until I feel more of it out and get more of the picture of the landscape, and then go back to the conversation. And we want to approach the next 6-7 weeks of our lives with that kind of care, with just noticing, something is really activating right now. How do I want to digest this for a bit first before diving into making, ultimatums or choices, etc. And that said, I personally have experienced eclipses to be like, I've had major breakups under eclipses, and it can be times where things just really come to a head, and it's like, you know what? I'm just sure that I can't do this part of my life anymore. So hold the balance of both. It's like, if you know that you're familiar with the energy, you've integrated it, you've digested it on your own, and you're still coming to the same conclusion for the umpteenth time, then that might be it. And the eclipses could be kind of the severance and the acceleration into this new way of living. So being in willing alignment with this transformational process, being receptive and being reflective. So this was a question that was asked earlier in the Q&A. There was a question about the Cancer eclipse, which is at 0 degrees Cancer on June 21st, is in Cancer, and the North Node is in Gemini. So the question was, does that make that eclipse less powerful? And I would say absolutely not, does not make it less powerful. Changes the energy, changes the vibration of the eclipse for sure. And so the previous two speakers already touched on this a bit, which is we've been in this landscape of North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn, and that started November 7th, 2018. So these are the dates, November 7th, 2018 to May 5th, 2020. The North Node's been in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn. And with that, we've been really reviewing fears and obstacles and restrictions and moving through a lot of dense and heavy material and recognizing, these are things that I just can't carry this burden anymore. I just want to care for myself. I just want to care for my loved ones. I just want to live in a world of mutual nourishment and care and loving connection. So there's been this real material and emotional focus for this past year and a half. And it's kind of funny for me because I actually gave birth to my daughter on November 8th. So I was like, oh yeah. She was like so connected to that node transition for me. So consider, what have you been learning for the last 18 months in your life? And that'll offer you a reflection on what the Cancer North Node, Capricorn South Node has been teaching you. And you want to look in particular at these months where there were eclipses. So look at January 2019, July 2019, and November, December 2019, and January 2020, and see, were there some major pivotal shifts happening in those months for you? And if so, what did they entail? And how does that, what do you take from that? How does that speak to your learnings and your growth and your evolution of this nodal cycle for the last 18 months? So the June 21st eclipse, I feel that it really harkens back to these lessons. And like Katie said, gives us a really close look at what's this story we've been living in and how are we ready to change that? Is this valid anymore? Is this reality anymore? Or is this like having one foot in the past and it feels like a ball and chain and we need to just liberate ourselves from it? So I think that June 21st eclipse is going to highlight those Cancerian themes that we've been working with. It's a good time to remember and ask these questions of yourself of those times outlined here. And then also look at what's the new story that the Gemini North Node wants us to step into. All right, so the North Node moved into Gemini May 6th, 2020. And just interesting, I'm not going to go into this too much, but the last time the North Node was in Gemini was October 14th, 2001 to April 14th, 2003. For those of us who have great memories, long memories, it can be really telling to go back to those dates and see what was transpiring in your life, what was happening on the collective. I found a lot of really interesting history that to me mirrors elements of what's going on now in the collective. So you might notice, for example, that October 14th, that was just a month after the Twin Towers fell in 2001. And some changes that emerged in the landscape after that here in the US were the Patriot Act was passed, which really increased the level of citizen surveillance by the government. There was also a No Child Left Behind Act that was passed, which was kind of sold as like a reformation of the education system, but it created a like testing body that actually made it a lot more challenging and harder for children to thrive in public education throughout the country in a lot of ways. So those were some major structural changes. I also saw, this was so fascinating, on the very last day of the North Node in Gemini, April 14th, 2003, I think it was the Human Genome Project was like solidified and celebrated, and it was found to have a 99.9% accuracy rate of being able to replicate and study the human genomic DNA pattern. So that was like the graduation of the Gemini North Node piece was, wow, we know what comprises human beings. You know, we can think about that now and look at the patterns of DNA. And I feel that that really relates to this time that we're in right now as well. If you want to really go down the rabbit hole and see what were the pivotal changes in my life from 2001 to 2003, these are the eclipse dates during that period: December 2001, May, June 2002, November, December 2002. So you can look back at those for resonant ripples, and it may hint at the types of transformation that we're heading for right now, this month and next month. So Gemini and Sagittarius are very close to my heart because I have 5 planets in Gemini and a couple of major planets in Sagittarius as well. And we already spoke a little bit about the South Node, North Node, but just another way that I look at it personally is the South Node can be our default setting. It's like kind of innate skills, innate gifts, like the things that we often take for granted about ourselves, that we just, it's like a well-oiled machine, you know, we don't have to think about it. It's so integrated. That's the South Node. So we know and rely on the South Node. But the South Node also points to where there are overaccumulated or overemphasized energies. So the South Node is, we can think of it as being a bit out of balance, and that we need to de-emphasize and de-escalate the South Node in order to grow and really move towards our fate and move towards our destiny. So the North Node is the muscle or the skill set that we're developing, or it's something that we want to embrace more and more, that we want to kind of center more and more. So we want to rally around. We want to tip the scales of balance. If the scales of balance are like really heavy in the South Node energies, we just want to see what we can to shift that so that the North Node can be that compass point on our true north. It's really normal to toggle back and forth. So, you know, it's a polar axis. So we never live like fully in one side or the other. They're always toggling. We're always kind of balancing and rebalancing and moving from one to the other. And the Gemini-Sagittarius axis is the axis of learning and the axis of exchange. So I think of it as it's about pollination, it's about perception, it's about what do you think of this? I learned this in class. I had this experience when I went for a hike in the woods, or when I went on this spiritual quest, and this vision, I had this vision, and now I'm going to tell about it. So we're really moving into a time for the next 18 months where learning and perception and exchange becomes the focus of what's important. They're mutable fire, Sagittarius, and mutable air signs. So they're dealing with spirit, energy, vitality, that's fire. And they're dealing with mind and consciousness and idea and humans, human to human, and also technology, that's air. They're spiraling, changing, alternating, pollinating, transmitting, immaterial. So, we're living in this era of fake news right now. And I think that's super emblematic of the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius axis. And I think we're in this living question right now. What do I believe in? What do I believe? Who do I trust? What do I trust? How do I know? And there's so much out there. There's so much information, and there's so many forces that are vying for, I would say, like governance over our perception, or vying for infiltration through perception. So the power of perception and the power of the mind is that's the main arena that we're playing in during this eclipse season and for the next 18 months. And we want to be asking a lot of questions, and also being receptive when there aren't answers, when there isn't clear sight. So a question I have here is it rational, or is there blind faith or dogma that's influencing here? And are we in broad generalizations? That's Sagittarius, kind of really broad brush strokes, and like, this is how people are, broad generalizations and assumptions. Or are we dealing with specific evidence-based logic? So these are some relevant questions for these times. So it's kind of like question yourself too, to some extent, like question your own mind, question your own experience. Like we're really we're trying to hone our view of what is real, and how do I know, and how do I break down mental constructs so that I'm maybe encountering direct reality more. So the South Node in Sagittarius, South Node, again, is like what we're drawing from, what we're drawing on, and what we're de-emphasizing. So some things we want to consider de-emphasizing during this time period of eclipses: dogma, polarized ideology, outworn belief systems. Like, it's okay to get into existential shedding mode. Like, wow, I really thought that was true, and then I realized, like, it's not true. I just got told that in 5th grade or whatever. So, like, big permission slip we want to give ourselves for this next 7 weeks and 18 months to just like question your own belief systems. De-emphasizing righteousness and the need to be right, zealousness and zealous storytelling. I think something that came up for me recently with my partner was the reminder that like the story that we tell ourselves is so powerful. It's almost like a trance sometimes. And if the story we tell ourselves is interfering with how I'm able to connect to and relate with my partner, like, that's a problem, and I want to look at that. I want to understand that story so I can deactivate it and write it in a different way. Moral purity, something we want to de-emphasize, actually. Sagittarius is also about the justice system, the legal system. So like a lot of judgment comes down in the Sagittarius zone. We actually want to de-emphasize that and kind of turn down the assumptions that lead to judgment. Ethical grandstanding, broad opinions. This is it, and this is how I know. You know, again, we're going to be toggling back and forth. Sagittarius is very extreme. It's a very high contrast sign too. It's about sort of pulling things apart so that we can see more, and it gets everything gets exaggerated as it gets pulled apart. So just knowing that, we want to de-emphasize that pulling apart a little bit, and like acknowledge that's going to be part of this transition process. And is there anything we can do to sort of neutralize that tensional charge a little bit? Blind faith in elite institutions, that's institutions of higher learning or hierarchical spirituality, bureaucracy, mainstream media. We want to de-emphasize blind faith. And like, I know this is true because this told me so. And Sagittarius is also about kinesthetic, physical, somatic, body knowing. So we really are in dialogue with it. Do I know this because I was conditioned this way or something out there told me, or do I know it because my body knows it? So we're going to be doing a lot of that work. Sagittarius is the global international sign. So we're going to be actually de-emphasizing that, which you can see is already happening as travel restrictions are going on. Sagittarius is go big, so blown out of proportion, full of hot air, churches of whatever, trust the experts. Sagittarius is also the realm of kind of elitist thought. So yeah, looking at that too, de-emphasizing sort of the mental governance from elite or aristocratic zones. And I love thinking about this for Sagittarius as like, who puts the cult in culture? Like a cult is an aggregate of people who have a shared belief of some kind, right? And recognizing that we ascribe to or find ourselves embedded in a culture that's based on consensus. Consensus is not necessarily the same as truth. The consensus is not necessarily the same as reality. Consensus doesn't even have to be related that much with like lived experience. Consensus can just kind of be something we agree to. So we're really looking at that during this eclipse season and beyond. What are we consenting to as a globe? What are we consenting to as a culture? And, you know, do we want to shift that in some way to better suit the stories we want to live into and better suit the beliefs we want to affirm? Yeah, so there's just more, there's a little more here. I'm going to skim this a bit, I think. So Sagittarius is the zone of abstract thought and kind of like higher mind, where everything is perception. And there's a lot of value in that, but it can also be misplaced. So sometimes when we're in abstract thought, it can be a way of sort of bypassing or not being fully present in what's happening on a human to human level. So we want to look at, you know, are these perceptions or thoughts I'm having, are they rooted? Are they grounded in reality? And if so, where can I tie that into? Who do I see on the ground who's telling me this news and where I'm picking up this information? Oh, I put the particle in the wave. I really think of that with this Sagittarius South Node, Gemini North Node. It's this understanding that there's a quantum reality, meaning that, you know, reality is not just the particle or the wave. It's a both and, depending on what we're tuning our perception to, which channel are we dialed into. So we're really getting a sense of what's the real nature of reality as consciousness. That's a huge theme for these next 18 months. The other thing is that Sagittarius is very interested in synthesis. So is interested in, like, if it's an either or, if it's a two duality thing, what's the resonant third, or what's the field of possibility that the either or creates? And yeah, how do we make sense of that field of possibility? I often see Sagittarius being about nature as well, a return to nature, an understanding of like the language of nature, the spirit and spirits of nature. So to me, there's a lot here about the philosophy of nature and what truly grounds us in meaning from the land up.
Hey, Virginia, you've got about 2 minutes because I want to get on to the next thing. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So, and I put psychedelic earth here. Like earth has a consciousness. It's a multicolored, interwoven tapestry consciousness, and that's going to be involved with this as well. So the North Node in Gemini is what we're drawing in and what we're centering. And I'll have to rush through this, but some things that we can look at here are like Gemini is about common sense and logic. I heard Christina say that the moon in Cancer represents people. I actually think the moon in Cancer is like people in their homes, and Gemini is also people, but it's like people in the world and people pollinating and interacting with one another and going to the farmer's market and sharing information and whatnot. So we're
Oh, and by the way, because you're just now getting the North Node, and this is so important, then I guess we'll give you about 5 minutes, but thank you.
Okay,
Is that good?
I'll still go quickly, but yeah, we'll finish out. I'm almost done. I have like 2 more slides. So Gemini is the commoner. It's about humans. It's about people. So rather than these kind of elite, higher institution, broad spectrum ideas, it's like, well, what's the anecdotal evidence? What does this person think in a way? And how do I enter into a dialogue and a conversation with curiosity and an open mind? Gemini is like beginner's mind. It's the student. So tapping us into the human story, tapping us into really thinking things through and welcoming complexity instead of this like broad generalization thing of Sagittarius. It's like, but what's the nuance there? And maybe this is like, how do I break these 2 polarities down into fine tuning it and kind of combing through and looking for A plus B equals C. What's actually happening here? What are the multiple perspectives that are engaging, and how are they speaking to each other? It's also about learning from neighbors, siblings, local community, learning from social media even, and unfunded news. It's a relocalization. So we're moving from a globalized world to a localized world. Gemini is about clear mind, clear thought, clear voice. Say it, speak it, share it, word, sound, power. So resisting censorship, I think, is a part of this. Personal exchange, a patchwork economy, small scale, bringing things down to small scale, bite size. What do I do with this? What's next? How do I understand this better? Gemini can also represent the fool or being naive, which could be positive or negative, right? Like minds, twins, kindred spirits. So we want to be connecting. We'll likely find ourselves connecting with people who share our thoughts. Maybe we're not sharing the same ideology, or maybe we are, but there's some conversations that can be had. So who's on the similar wavelength? We're finding those people. Spreading the word. Another shadow of Gemini is a scattered focus, kind of being distracted, too many channels on at once, so much so that it's noise. So, a recommendation for that is like actually unplug from all forms of media and just go to the body. What am I hearing here? What am I hearing from the inside out? What am I hearing from maybe my higher or wider self or another source of knowing? That would be a great practice during eclipse season, is just unplug. So practicing communication, practicing connecting to others and building relationships, practicing being in disagreement, but still being able to talk to each other and respecting varying viewpoints, and disseminating knowledge and information is going to be a huge part of this. We're cultivating honesty and truthfulness, because Gemini can rule kind of deception or lies at times too. So our perception is going to be very heightened, and we just want to make sure that we're speaking and sharing as honestly as we can from the inside out. And these are very serious times. So in a lot of ways, and the Gemini North Node is inviting us to come into play, play, curiosity, questioning, playful exploration, the ability to adapt to change and be flexible. And the last thing I want to really speak to is this idea of true technology, because I mentioned that Human Genome Project, and that happened at the last time the North Node was in Gemini. And there's a lot going on with technology right now and consolidation, and just to understand that, like, yes, we're on computers right now, we've got phones, there's these human-made forms of technology, but there are other forms of technology that are maybe more cosmic, more inborn, more internal, more celestial, that we also have access to. Intuition is an example of that kind of technology. Telepathy and sort of third eye, inner sight perception is a form of technology. I think there's so much technology that's really inborn, innate, and natural to us that we can strengthen and draw upon. What might it be like to be able to call a gathering like this and just send out the signal from the electric field of our own bodies, right? And to be able to kind of tap in through Indra's web, through this web that connects us all, that always has connected us all to each other and to everything way before this internet came around. I do believe that this eclipse season is an accelerated portal into an evolution of consciousness. So give that space, give that human nature technology a lot of space. No single source has the truth, so we're going to be weaving it together one by one.
All right, are you complete with your
Yep.
presentation? I love that dance you were doing. Was that some choir you were doing when you were talking about Sagittarius? I don't know if you were even conscious you were doing some dancing.
Nope,
we were loving it. Yeah. We were talking in the chat box. That's awesome. I'll give Virginia and Katie a huge round of applause. Bye. Thank you all so much for joining us. And if you would like more of our guidance around eclipse season, we are opening up right now our eclipse circle. And this is a creation that's from all of our hearts. Virginia put her beautiful words all over our webpage for it that really speaks to the intention that we all three came together for this. And the title is, as I think I just said it, Braiding the Spiral. I'll show you. Oops, I was hoping it would just come up here. There I am. Yay. Can you guys see my screen okay? Looks good? Okay. So Braiding the Spiral is our virtual eclipse circle experience, and we're kicking it off on June 7th. So that is just 2 days right after that powerful lunar eclipse. So we're right in the lunar eclipse. I love having these eclipse circles throughout the eclipse experience, because we can come together and again see one another's humanity, and learn from one another and share and teach. And after having done this for many years, I found that this is really where we can make some real change together, and we can go into these periods of our lives with a lot more clarity and confidence, right? In a time of fear, we nurture love. In a time of isolation, we gather. I think that's so beautiful. And it's so much what everyone needs to do right now. Again, this is Virginia's beautiful words that eclipses are initiations, they're turning points, they're portals of acceleration. You know, this is the thing, before I had any realization of what eclipses were, you know, we have this idea of like just the word, it sounds like, oh my God, some bad omen, you know, and in some ways, and for some nations, like it does turn out that way. But in our own lives, we have the, you know, the power and the magic of being able to have our consciousness and be able to make choices and be able to change and grow. And that is really some of the beauty of eclipses when it comes to our personal transformation. And you do not need to fly blind. Astrology gives us a language, a cosmic context, and a map for the journey. So myself, Katie Sweetman, and Virginia Rosenberg will guide you through a 6-week online program starting June 7th to July 12th. And so that's through the eclipses plus one additional integration call. I don't like to leave people hanging for eclipse season. I always like to extend it a little bit beyond the eclipse season portal so that we can have an integration. And sort of close the sacred space together. And so we'll be meeting every Sunday on Zoom for 6 weeks. We'll be doing teaching similar to today, more about, you know, the spiritual insight, the consciousness potential, and we'll be able to share in community. So you know how today is more of sort of a one-way teaching. We'll be doing this on Zoom meetings, so you'll be able to, if you want, turn on your camera and ask questions and share with us. I usually like everyone to share and have at least some time in, you know, in the hot seat with us and share with what's going on with them. And it's amazing the wisdom that comes from our students. And in this Gemini-Sagittarius time, this is students teaching and teachers learning, and, you know, all of us exchanging our knowledge and wisdom together. And so braiding the spiral has this idea of, you know, as society unravels, what do we do with the threads? Virginia, do you want to talk a little bit about where the braiding the spiral title came from? Make sure that you can still, I'll unmute you.
Oh yeah, sure. Where there was an article by Charles Eisenstein called "The Coronation," which was a Sagittarius Gemini philosophical assessment about everything that was happening with the COVID scenario right now. And one of the things that he talks about in there is that the threads of reality have kind of pulled so far apart that they've started to snap. And, you know, do we want to unravel and untangle them further, or do we want to try to repair them and kind of, you know, we can never go back to how those threads were previously. And I say, yeah, we want to reconnect some threads, but let's make a new pattern. And how can this pattern be maybe more circular rather than kind of parallel side by side? And so, yeah, it's really about the morphic field that we create when we bring our channels together in a circular container to kind of like draw in something grander. Yeah,
I had the image because I think, you know, you'd sent it in an email, you know, it wasn't meant to be the title of the whole thing. It was like your ideas. And I was like, that one line is just like what we're being called to do, because when the old world is dissolving, you know, and slipping through our fingers, and in some ways, you know, we've had to eliminate old concepts and paradigms. You know, what do we do with creating the new? Because that's part of it. You know, it's not all just complete destruction. There's also an opening space for like weaving a new world together. And the idea to me with weaving is it's more than just one pair of hands, right? It takes all of us to contribute to that. Thank you so much. And for the audience, you know, so for the program, we're going to be gathering weekly on Zoom Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 1 p.m. Pacific time. And in Europe, what are you guys, 6 hours after us? I think 10 p.m. It's maybe a little late for you, but I know some of my European friends will stay up late for us. And some of our Australian friends may be able to get up early. But it'll be a beautiful weekly gathering. I know a lot of us are probably part of little Zoom cocktail hours and, like meeting up with Zoom with friends. I mean, this isn't that. This is actually taking you through a journey through eclipse season, where we will gather, but we'll gather in ceremony, we'll gather in learning and sharing. And I love what Katie had said about we are ritualizing the eclipses. I don't know if it was Katie or Virginia, one of you, both of you, I think it was Katie, that we are ritualizing the eclipse, because otherwise we would be just, going through the vortex, right? But when we just sort of take in the ancient cosmic insight, along with the, evolutionary awakening, and then we create practices around them, then that allows us to have some grounding. Was that you, Katie, that had said the thing about ritualizing? You don't remember? Maybe it was Virginia. I don't know. I always am taking.
Can't remember. It just comes out like a stream of consciousness.
I think that was because I was like, wait a second. Let me write this down. What's your intention for the eclipse circle, Katie?
I really love that you all have been talking about these threads that have been unraveling, because one of the ways that I look at eclipses is, especially within the Saros series, and maybe this is a little bit of a technical point for people, but there's the great weaving. These eclipses, they form a spiral as they go like the Kundalini around the earth, and they sort of they weave a great tapestry. And then these eclipses, as we, of course, these eclipse series can be 500 or 800 years old. So, but for this moment, 2020, what are we contributing? And all of our choices, our actions, our consciousness, our love is contributing a thread to this great weaving, and also this sort of mini tapestry that forms every 6 months when we have the new moon solar eclipse, or the part of this, you zoom out a little bit and you can see what's been happening since 2018. So I want people to be a participant in this weaving. So that's my intention for this eclipse circle.
I see you nodding your head, Virginia. What do you have to add? That's beautiful, Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, I loved that. And the word participant, to participate, just brings me alive, I feel like. My intention is the same as it always is. My intention is connection. Connection is like lifeblood to me. So connection to self, connection to consciousness, connection to nature, connection to one another in this circular container. Just knowing that we're walking through it together, and that we can learn from each other, because I don't know everything all on my own. It's like so lonely, this little stream of consciousness that's just coming through my puny ego. It's not until I get into a spiraling circle with others that everything can amplify and heighten, and the potency and the charge and the frequency just goes up, and also gets more grounded. So that's my intention, is to create and honor and hold and imbibe a container of connection like that.
I love that. And that sounds so nourishing right now. And it's interesting because I'm thinking of, we just came from the Cancer Capricorn eclipses, and, I've got lots of Capricorn myself, and we're shifting to this, the Gemini-Sag with the nodes there. We still have some Cancer Capricorn to get through, but it's almost like it's this handing off, it's like what was nourishing before may need to, shift and change. That, we have to get, open our minds anew, and it's actually knowing and understanding the world that we live in actually can give us more of that sense of safety and security. But sometimes it may take the breaking of the, what we thought we knew. And I think doing it in a community where we can trust one another, and we can, support one another's curiosity and growing. I think that's a great potential for our circle. I see you smiling over there, Katie. Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I just love this. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to come together and to share this wisdom and knowledge, not just amongst ourselves, but there's been a few hundred people at different points, and I don't even know how many people are on YouTube. So it's a thank you all.
Yeah, and I wanted to share this quote from one of our participants from last year. She said, "The soul nourishing program is powerful medicine for our times. The guidance and practices were so beautiful, joyous, and deeply healing. It's difficult to express the depth and value contained in the course content and materials. Soul medicine, deep bows of gratitude for all of it." And I just am so honored to read those words. And also, I know for sure that whoever is drawn to this work, is the right person and it's the right time. So you want to just sit with yourself and ask yourself if this is something that your soul's been calling for. And if so, we would love to welcome you. So you can go to braidingthespiral.com. It'll redirect to this full page, but go to braidingthespiral.com. Can one of you gals put that in the chat box in case anybody wants to check out the website, braidingthespiral.com. Again, it starts in a little over a week, right? Sunday, June 7th is our first call. Now, we're right in eclipse season. This is the time to gather. This is the time to find your people, right? And it's a time where we're all learning. There's so much that we need to know about how we move in this world. Virginia has been such a guiding light around social change, around respecting differences in people and their different sort of the sexuality, how they, I don't know what you call gender representation and different. I mean, you can tell I have a lot to learn still, but I've learned a lot from her in respecting all people and making all people feel welcome and accepted in the world, because we're getting more and more aware that these sort of polarities are just keeping us more separated, and we need to understand and accept this world that we live in and the great tapestry of it, which is another great sort of resonance with this program. You can check out the program schedule. We are meeting, as I said, every Sunday. You can click on the little arrows that'll give you some of the themes of each of the days. We're starting with an opening ceremony. We're calling in the ancestors for the Sagittarius lunar eclipse. And I will be hosting that. And then Katie's going to be working with breaking down the shadow, talking about this massive Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that we've been pretty much having all year, but here it's coming up really strongly again. She also has some beautiful teachings around Chiron. And then Virginia is our mama bear, who's here to guide us through the Cancer solar eclipse. That's the big one. That is the one with the crown on top on the solstice.
Okay. Right after my birthday. So you're all invited to my cosmic birthday party.
Oh, yay.
And I was listening to you say about the Cancer solar eclipse, and it was like, you said something about like, oh, I don't want to, I just want to release all these burdens and like just be like nourished and cozy. And I'm like, you're teaching a big thing. You're going to show us exactly what that's like, even if you have to show up in your robe. And then we've got the June 28th, creating the vision. So Katie's leading us through what happens after the breaking down the shadow. Then we have the space to be creative. July 5th, I will be leading the Capricorn lunar eclipse session, which is, I'm a triple Capricorn. So it's, so it's right around my ascendant. And it's an interesting culmination from the December Christmas eclipse, the Eclipsemas, I had called it, which was right on my sun, actually. So that should be a very interesting lunar eclipse, another full moon in Capricorn. And we're wrapping up July 12th with Virginia. She's going to be integrating with us, again, taking all that we have learned and all that we have experienced and and experiencing it through the soul retrieval, cosmic ancestors, earth body connection. It sounds amazing to me. You can read more of our testimonials, read more about us, each one of us, who we are, how we come to this. You know, we do all connect through the soul and astrology, but we all have different viewpoints. And I like what you said, Virginia, that there is something about, you know, this understanding one another, different points of view, and even learning to disagree with one another, and maybe that even leading to more that we know, you know. And so I'm really looking forward to learning from both of you ladies and from our students as well. The last day to register is on Friday, June 5th. So think about it and really let your heart tell you if this is the right thing. You don't have a lot of time. Sorry, guys. I wish we could have given you a lot more time. Those of you who know me know I do eclipse circles every eclipse season, so you knew it was coming. For those of you that are new, I hope that if this calls to your soul, you can join us. We've got our frequently asked questions. You could probably find it there. You can always contact me if you have questions, but we reviewed the dates. We reviewed who this program is for. I did want to point out that this program is for all humans who are interested in connection with self, others, and the cosmos. In the past, I limited it just to women because especially during the Cancer Capricorn, I feel that women at times do need to come together and have this safe space. I do feel, however, this is a time, you know, and who knows who's called to it. I'm not saying we're creating it for anything specific other than we're not limiting it to who is being called to these teachings and for this program. And I just think that's really important to put out there for everyone's expectations and, you know, feeling into if this is the right group for you. You know, just checking out all the other questions there. So the good news is that we have an early bird option that's available for the next 48 hours until June 1st, right? So that's a Monday. Until Monday night, you can think about it, you can save $100. The price will normally be $497. I will say a year ago, the last time I did this group, it was $1,200 and we had like 20 people in it. And it was awesome. Although at that time we, you know, everyone with that group got a reading from each of us. I felt like I wanted to make this more affordable for more people. So we decided to keep it strictly, you know, group and teaching and community. And if anybody wants to then also get a reading from one of us ladies, they can also, you know, book separately. So this is like a third of the price that normally I would charge. So normally it is, like I said, the regular price is $497. You can get $100 off if you enroll now until Monday. There's also a payment plan. You can split this up in two. And there is also a special of bring a friend. If you bring a friend, you basically are getting the early bird special. And that goes through Friday. If you bring a friend, enroll together, make sure you both enroll together at the same time and you each save $100. That's really nice to know that you have someone in there that you can start to create community and help us all hold space together. You're also, you know, supporting us as quality astrologers and teachers. So, you know, we're happy to offer it at this really affordable rate and offer a payment plan. I hope that speaks to you and that's a great value for you all. We've done our best to pack as much value as we can in this program. So again, go to braidingthespiral.com. The early bird is until Monday. Bring a friend, think about that, call up your friends and see who wants to be in this program with you. And you know what? If you don't come, most people come by themselves anyway, at least for my programs in the past. I think Virginia usually gets a lot of, you know, sort of couples coming for her past workshops. But for mine, we quickly create community. You know, I mean, 6 weeks, I don't know if that sounds long to you. I know that we will turn around and be like, whoa, you know, that was a lot of depth and a lot of connection and a lot of personal growth too, because ultimately this is for each individual's personal growth, and we're each accompanying each other through this eclipse experience. And it's an incredibly beautiful experience. So I hope if you feel called, you will join us. Again, it's ratingthespiral.com.
Christina, yeah, we've had a couple of questions about the length of the meetings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see how long they will be. The Zoom calls we're going to try to keep them to about 90 minutes, right? Isn't that what we agree? I mean, I think we can each decide. I would say 90 minutes or now this is the thing. Now for the opening ceremony and for the closing ceremony, they may go a little long. Virginia, it's up to you. I know you've got a baby at home, so you might not want to go longer.
It's just my teaching style and stuff. It's like block out 2 hours, but we're gonna say 90 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing. The biggest objection I've gotten in the past, they say, "Oh, I don't have time for this. You know, I would love to, I just don't have the time." And it kind of reminds me of the thing where, okay, so you don't have time to meditate for 15 minutes. That means you need to meditate for an hour, kind of thing. But actually, how we've designed this program is to fit busy people. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of additional. There's not additional homework or additional, videos you have to watch or anything, but we will have additional practices that are suggested that you can take, because there's going to be some people who likely, want even more. And we want to definitely give people that total sense of, nourishment, who are open to it. But, Sundays for, up to 90 minutes, I think I can say my opening ceremony is probably going to go longer than that because I really like for us to get to know each other. And the more you put in, the more you get out of it. So about 90 minutes every Sunday, just for 6 weeks. It'll be, it'll go by in no time because as we know, the eclipse portal time is it seems like it's a non-concept during eclipses. And so what else? Let's see. Is that the only question? Let's see. And Emily said, Christina, will the members of your radio astrology community receive additional discount to participate in this eclipse circle? I think I forgot to ask you ladies, that we each, I believe, probably have memberships and things like that. So that's going to be depending on each of us. I would definitely like to offer my members an additional discount. Give me another day to put it together, and I will be emailing the membership very shortly. For now, though, I definitely want you all to really consider that this is something that is, it's so easy in this time of social isolation to really feel isolated, right? And again, even though so many people are connecting on Zoom, I don't, I save my connections for Zoom for some real value and quality. It's yet another thing where just because it's available doesn't mean you should do everything. But how we've intended this is to be a focused experience for us all. Those of you who joined us for the Astrology of Awakening, wasn't that amazing? And that was only a 3-day thing. And so many people wanted more and more and more. So I hope that you will take, that opening that we had, and those of you who really want to experience that through the eclipse season, we invite you to join us. Ladies, what else do you have to add before we close and before we let Virginia lead us in a meditation? Katie, do you have something to add?
I just think that we are creating a really wonderful container for some powerful transformation through these eclipses. So I'm excited to be a part of this with you all and everybody that joins the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Virginia, let us know, do you have something else to add? And I know you wanted to wrap us up with a meditation. I did want to say before that, though, some people were asking about our slides. Could they get a copy of our slides? our slide deck, I would like to really give those to our students. So what's happening with this recording is, you have a good, until next Friday, you can rewatch this recording, you can take notes. After that, we're taking it off online. It's going to be a bonus for our students for the circle, and they're going to get our slide decks. And, you can, as a student, you can always refer back to it. Because through the Eclipse Circle, it's not going to be your typical astrology class. The astrology is there as, some guideposts, but beyond the astrology, what is the meaning? And that's what we really want to take a deep dive into. All right, that's it for me. I think I've yacked away enough. Virginia, take us away.
All right. So before we do a closing kind of meditation, if you can and if you would like, maybe stand up or stretch out your arms or take some movements with the body, because we've been sitting and kind of stationary for a long time. And I want to close in a good way. And you can choose to stay standing if that feels good for you, or take any movements as we go along, or you could sit back down if that's more comfortable. And close your eyes if that is compatible with the position of your body. And otherwise, you can just keep a soft gaze. And bring attention to your breath. Sensing this field of awareness that we've cultivated during this call. And letting any energy or information that wants to be integrated or digested, letting that come deeper in as you breathe, as you inhale. And if there's anything that didn't land that you'd like to just lay down or let it pass by you that you don't need to take in, just release it on the exhale. So inhaling to integrate, exhaling to clear and release. Two more breaths like that. Feeling the earth underneath you. Letting your body get heavy and anchor into this particular place, this locality where you are right now. Settling in. And from this particular location, we all have a unique view of the sky. So even if your eyes are still closed, using your inner eye to perceive and imagine the sky opening up above and around you, right where you are. And there were over 1,800 people who registered for this call. So sense all the earth points that are holding the bodies of those people at this time. And sending your breath into that earth grid that we create together through accessing this information. And then sensing that each one of these 1,800 plus people in various localities has a unique view, a unique perspective of the sky above. And just allow yourself to perceive that pattern, that puzzle, that collective etheric field. Opening your own mind, your own sight to grasp more of the whole. And the next breath we take is a shared breath, breathing this mutual sky. And the last moment here to center yourself into an intention for your eclipse season. What do you want to walk with? What is your intent? What is your prayer? And honoring the morphic field of prayer and intention that we're weaving together right now. Knowing that this is real. Breathing into that. And when you're ready, you can transition. Thank you so much.
All right, let's come back online for one last goodbye from all of us. Thank you so much, Virginia. You really have a gift with energy work. I'm so excited to be joining you and Katie for the Eclipse Circle. We already had someone join just now, although I don't know the name, the person. Let me see. We have our first student. Let me see. What was, she had her business name here. Cat Walks. She joined us. Yay. So thank you, everyone. Please don't hesitate if this is the right thing for you. I hope that you will join us and help us create the space together, because it's not just us creating the space. We all together create the energetic space. I have seen so many students go from being so afraid to be seen or heard, who actually really have a lot they want to share, and a lot they're ready to share, and have over time really opened up. And in this space, you'll have the space to open up, to share, to be seen, to be heard, because, you know, we are all teachers at this time in history, right? Like, we have to be able to be ready and give ourselves permission to share our wisdom and to share our hearts. So go ahead.
Thing, which is that this, as you know, will be recorded, and especially because we have the Bring a Friend discount. If there's anyone you think of that you want to share the webinar with and the recording with, then by all means, please do that. I got a message, Christina, that someone tried to register, but it was after the call was live, so they couldn't. They said they had trouble, they couldn't register. So
okay, I'll have to check the link thing. Oh, I thought it was always open. I think maybe it has a setting. I can fix that. Okay, great.
to send out the link to the recording to all of you, and please share it widely with any friend or beloved that might benefit from this information.
Yeah, I also want to just put in there that we know that there's, a lot of people who, may also be, unemployed or that sort of thing. So for today, we gave so much information and value. This is part of a course I used to actually teach on eclipses. So, you have this great, what we've been on for 2 hours of eclipse insight and information. This is like a course that can alone, if you can't even afford to join us, you can take this information and hopefully take all the value from it by watching it again and sharing it with your friends. Those of you who can join us, again, we welcome you and we welcome your support. And we welcome you to join us for this transformational experience. Katie, what do you have to share with us?
I think we are all bringing such rich information that I feel like I had a conversation once, it was with a book agent, and you sort of have to present people something that they can't get through a meme or read on the internet. And this is truly something that you just, you're not going to get anywhere else. Part of it, to the point of the morphic field, when we sort of bring all of our points together, our threads together, we create something very special, and then everybody else is bringing something in. So this is truly going to be a beautiful thing. These energies are so ephemeral. They're just this moment in time, and so I would love for you all to be a part of it.
I just want to have a shout out to everyone who's saying thank you, thank you, thank you in the chat box. I couldn't get to everyone. Susan, thank you so much. And Yvonne says, you all are luminaries. Thank you from New Orleans. Susie says, thank you. This was fantastic. Blessings from Oakland. Claudia Moon says, thank you. Christina, Katie, Virginia, so informative, helpful, and interesting. Felicia, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Louisa, Susan, Krista, Mitch. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Again, we wish you a very beautiful eclipse season. Keep an eye out for the recording. You can also watch, we have the live recording is on the Radiant Astrology YouTube channel. And that will be up until Friday, until that is decision day. You have till Friday to decide to join with us, and we start next Sunday. So we hope that we can be part of your Super Soul Sunday for eclipse season with the three of us. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a great eclipse season if we don't see you.
Absolutely.